how are you approaching the rest of the weekends? I mean, obviously hoping to find better balance in FP3, I guess, and what would be a good weekend for you then in the end, do you think?
Yeah, I think I still have hope and there's potential in this car, and it's just my question to the guys is like, there are certain issues that we have. I'm like, these are my problems, help me fix them. You know, like what can we do to improve our ride and the bouncing that we have? So, and the understeer. So if we can fix those going into P3, then I think we could be in a slightly better position. I mean, the first and second sector, I was right there. Pace-wise, wasn't so bad. It's just when you got to third sector, this was like 7/10. So if I can fix that tomorrow, I think we can do better.
Your last Friday in that car done. How are you feeling? I thought you might be.
Thankful. No, I feel okay. I think obviously Arthur did a good job this morning. It's always cool to watch youngsters come through and do what they do and see them shine. And then ultimately it puts whoever's misses the session on a little bit of back foot, but I did my best to kind of get up to speed as quick as possible, and obviously faced with quite a difficult balance in the session, so we've got some work to do.
In this car.
And I'm kind of happy about that, especially considering how he's going at the moment. So yeah, but I really want to finish on a high. It doesn't look like it's going to finish on a high if we continue like that, but I'll do my best. No, it was incredible. I mean, it's always a very special emotion to see my brother into a Formula One seat and to be sharing the track in Formula One with him when we were both dreaming of that moment when we were kids. So it's a very special moment. However, unfortunately, it was the only positive of today because the rest has been a struggle, but at least that gives me a little bit of a smile.
Can you imagine Charles Leclerc complaining in the middle of practice that his Ferrari has no grip at all? And Hamilton saying that this was the worst year of his entire career? Well, that just happened, and Ferrari didn't see it coming. What is happening within the most legendary team in F1? That was the exact moment when Frederic Vasseur, team director, decided to stop the aerodynamic development of the SF25. The reason? McLaren's overwhelming dominance in the early races convinced Maranello that this year was doomed before it had even really begun. And in the cold logic of the managers, it made sense to allocate all resources to 2026, when the new chassis, engine, and aerodynamic regulations would come into force. Imagine going more than 2/3 of a season without any updates. No new parts. No evolution. In a sport like Formula One, where each race is a war of tenths, where each team brings news almost every 2 weeks, how do you maintain motivation when you know that you are going into battle with the same old weapons while your rivals sharpen new knives every day? The team felt it like a silent betrayal. Mechanics, engineers, and drivers saw how podiums, opportunities, and above all, competitive respect were slipping away, simply because the board had decided to look to the following year. It was a slow but relentless demoralization. The atmosphere in Maranello turned gray. Technical meetings stopped being about how to win and became exercises in damage containment. There was no talk of performance, there was talk of enduring. The simulations ceased to have a practical purpose because the car was no longer going to change. The wind tunnel tests were directly derived from the 2026 project. And meanwhile, Leclerc and Hamilton sat in a car that they knew would never improve. Vasseur admitted it honestly weeks later. When you still have 18 races left and you know that no improvement is going to come, it is difficult to manage psychologically. The free practices of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix were not simple training sessions. They were a public confession of a failure that could no longer be hidden. It was there where Charles Leclerc, without filters, said it all with just a few words on the radio. The car has zero grip, incredible. It was not a tactical complaint, nor an isolated vent. It was the genuine lament of a driver who has spent all year battling a car that appears to have been designed to sabotage his own talent. During FP2, Hamilton was even more explicit. "It's the worst year of my career." A phrase that not only hurts coming from one of the most successful pilots of all time, but also reveals the level of emotional rupture that exists between him and the SF25. Not only has Lewis not managed to get on the podium all year, something that has never happened to him, but he has had to relearn how to drive. Change your style. Imitate Leclerc's approach. And yet, the car responds with instability, premature graining, and a rear axle that seems to float instead of gripping the asphalt. The most alarming thing about these statements is not their content, but the moment in which they occur. They do not occur in the middle of a specific crisis, but in the last race of the year. After 22 weekends, the car remains a mystery even to its own drivers. The lack of evolution, the poorly executed design, the structural errors in the rear suspension. All of this has left Ferrari with a car that simply cannot be driven consistently. These words from Leclerc and Hamilton are more than technical criticisms. They are the reflection of the emotional divorce between the team and its drivers. It is the result of months of frustration, broken promises, failed strategies, and a deafening silence on the part of a board that opted for resignation as a policy. Never before have two such different talents at such different stages of their careers agreed on the same conclusion. Ferrari failed them. The result in Abu Dhabi was a sentence. Ferrari was mathematically sealed in 4th place in the Constructors' Championship. No victory, no last-minute podium, not even a decent result could disguise what was already evident. The Scuderia had failed. But what was truly serious was not the position in the table, but rather what was broken internally. Trust is one of the most delicate pillars within a Formula One team. It does not appear in the telemetry data, nor is it quantified in the technical reports. But when it is lost, everything falls apart. And Ferrari in 2025 lost more than points. It lost its competitive identity. Internally, the atmosphere has become tense. Leclerc and Hamilton's public statements were just the tip of the iceberg. Inside the garage, there have been reports of arguments between technical departments, signs of exhaustion among track engineers, and evident wear and tear between the development and operations areas. When a team stops believing in its own project, every mistake becomes a trial, and every race, a battle to survive emotionally. The pilots, for their part, face different but equally turbulent paths. Charles Leclerc, in his 6th season with Ferrari, is beginning to project an emotional exhaustion that is reminiscent of other talents that have faded within the Maranello ecosystem. His contract ties him beyond 2025, but his motivation is in doubt. He has gone from being the team's prodigy to becoming a figure trapped between frustration and resignation. Lewis Hamilton, on the other hand, has no history with Ferrari. He arrived looking for a new start and found himself with a team more lost than his previous home in Mercedes. And although his experience, his mettle, and his ability to adapt are unquestionable, even he seems to have reached an emotional limit. The phrase, "the worst year of my career," is not thrown into the air without consequences. The big question is what Ferrari will do with all this. Fred Vasseur has promised that the 2026 project will be completely different, with a car that is born from scratch under the new technical regulations. But that promise is no longer enough. The credibility of the team is damaged. And in an environment like Formula One, where every decision is filtered, analyzed, and discussed to the millimeter, Ferrari needs more than a plan. It needs a structural transformation. That includes restructuring the technical department, redefining the development strategy, and perhaps making difficult decisions regarding team leadership. The problem is not just the car. It is the work culture, decision-making, and the disconnection between what the pilots need and what the team delivers. And if that were not enough, the competition does not wait. McLaren, Mercedes, and even Red Bull are already actively working on their 2026 projects with a solid foundation, results that support their technical direction, and much more stable internal confidence. Ferrari, on the other hand, starts from chaos. 2026 represents an opportunity, yes, but it's also a trap. Because if the car doesn't work from the first race, there will be no justification that will hold up. Patience will wear thin. And with it, perhaps also the continuity of its star drivers. What we witnessed in Abu Dhabi was much more than the end of a failed season for Ferrari. It was a raw, painful, and completely public expose of a team that has lost control of its own narrative. A team that, with all its legacy, with all its history, and with two of the most talented drivers on the grid, has been unable to deliver a car worthy of its shield. Leclerc, the emotional heir of the Scuderia, raised his voice not only as a driver, but as a symbol of the wear and tear that Ferrari is experiencing inside. And Hamilton, a 7-time world champion, sentenced with a single sentence what thousands of tifosi have felt for years: "This was the worst year of my career." How did Ferrari get to this point? How has frustration been normalized? And now the question is inevitable: can they rebuild from these ashes? Formula One is cruel to the weak, but it is also generous to those who reinvent themselves. And 2026 will be the biggest technical reset in a decade. The car will be new, the rules too. But none of that will matter if Ferrari doesn't fix the most important thing first: its own competitive soul. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.